On today's podcast,
We weren't trying to educate our customers. We wanted to serve the customers who came. So don't have a backup plan. Go with what your customers tell you they want.
the truth is, adding value will never go out of style.
This podcast is brought to you by iWatch Security. iWatch Security. Get the savings and service that you deserve.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for another Five Things podcast. I've got a longtime client, a really good guy here today, a business guy. Excited to talk with you, Van. Thanks for taking the time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was
Van
excited
Alston.
when you invited me.
Van Alston owns several businesses over the years. Tell us a little bit about your business experience, some of your interests that you have in the triangle here.
Well, I started years ago with a bar called the Comet Lounge down on Hillsborough Street. And started that basically with $5,000. And within a month, I was in the red or the black, I guess, and have been in the bar business ever since.
Okay.
The first one turned out to be a gold mine and helped me get through my mistakes.
There you go. And I know Slim's, which has been in business for a long time.
And I think that was our first business together.
I believe so, yeah.
Slim's. We also have Mojo's, Mitch's Tavern, Zenith.
Yep.
There's a few more that I'm involved in, but
Right.
one of the things that we'll talk about is every place has to have a face, and I'm the face of Slim's. I'm not the face of any of those other places. We always have someone who speaks for those places.
Interesting. You know, because it's part of the brand, I think, ultimately, from my point of view. I think that a lot of companies nowadays, when you think of a Tesla, you think of an Elon Musk. You know, is that kind of the same thing, or do you think it's just unique to the bar business?
Well, no, that's exactly what it is. When we want you to associate one place with one person.
Okay.
Chris speaks for Mojo's. I speak for Slim's. Will Gibbs speaks for Zenith. Todd Crisco speaks for Mitch's.
And where are you from originally, Van?
I'm from Greensboro originally. I grew up in Greensboro, came to NC State in 1981. And as I like to say, I crammed 3 years into 7. I'm still a junior, and maybe one day I'll graduate, but it's not looking like it's going to get there.
Hey, you seem like you're doing all right.
Well, like I tell people, it's one of my standard jokes is, I'm one of the very few people who went to college, majored in beer, and made a career out of it.
That's true. Well, let me ask you this. We got 5 really good topics that I'm excited about getting into, but what is something that if there was an 18-year-old, 17-year-old getting ready to get out of high school right now, what advice would you give that young man or woman?
The advice would be to go on the internet and look up compound interest.
That's great advice, yeah.
Saving 10% of your money from the get-go is going to make you a rich man long before any of your friends are. And that includes when you're working at McDonald's flipping burgers. Wherever you go along the way, put 10% aside and let it grow. Definitely.
And like ideally in a stock market, I'm assuming, or even if just in a small CD or something like that.
Save it, put it in mutual funds. Then when you get enough of it, get somebody smarter than you to advise you.
Okay. You ever heard the saying, a penny that doubles every day? Would you rather have $1 million or a penny that doubles every day for a month?
Well, right.
That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do your research.
Yeah. And so if you've never done that before, it's actually amazing to watch that a penny that doubles every day for a month you come out way better than $1 million.
Yeah, it comes out at like $6 million or something like that.
It's astronomical when it starts really compounding. So that's great advice. I wish I would have listened to that earlier.
I wish someone would have told me.
Right.
But this is the advice that I give people now.
Right. I use an example of I bought an HP Hewlett Packard it was towards the end of my military. I think I bought it in 95. Had I bought HP stock instead, I mean, that computer was worth nothing in a relatively short period of time, but that HP stock, I'd be rocking it right now. And by the way, I want to mention that you're coming off a Wolfpack screaming, large volume of screaming. So yes. I appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate the tea, and I apologize to your viewership for my voice today.
No, it's all good.
I can't apologize for my accent. Whenever I listen to one of these things, it always sounds like I just came in from the country and fell off the turnip truck. So the accent I was born with, but the scratchiness is my own fault this weekend.
But it was well worth it. So you're involved in the Wolfpack RTC?
The Wolfpack RTC, which is a regional training center.
Okay.
It works with the post-collegiate athletes on the world stage. We have multiple world medal winners, Pan Am winners, multiple medalists, and it also helps the college kids in the off season. I think we're taking 19 of them to Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
In April, and it prepares them for a post-collegiate life of wrestling if they choose to go that way.
Okay.
And I'm on the board of directors, and my job is to, as you well know, to raise money and help these kids out.
Well, that's awesome. Do you foresee a lot of these guys going into somewhere like the UFC in the future?
There are a few of them that
Yeah.
are going. Two of our guys right now, Tommy Gant, who was a Pan Am champion, Mike Machiavello, who was an NCAA champion. Both of those guys have just recently been talking with the UFC and what is it, Bellator?
Oh, Bellator, yep.
Yep. And trying to figure out what their next moves are.
Wow. All right. So it's been really interesting watching those career paths develop over the last 10 to 20 years to where, I think fortunately now you've got wrestlers that have much more of a post-college career opportunity because wrestling is such a dominant mixed martial art in itself.
Well, as they say, it's the original martial art.
Right. That's definitely exciting. What's been kind of rewarding for the Wolfpack RTC? Just
Seeing these guys, and one of the benefits of the RTC is that the wrestlers in the RTC are there for the wrestlers at NC State University. So they're still mentors to the kids who are there. And the RTC is a big reason that we're now 5-time ACC champions for the Wolfpack College Wrestling.
wow.
It was.
I didn't even know that. Yeah.
That's why
I knew we had some
my
good
voice
wrestlers.
is gone on
Yeah.
from Sunday. It's unprecedented in the modern era to win 5 in a row.
Wow.
The last time I think it was done was the 60s or 70s.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. I knew we had a good wrestling program. I didn't realize it was that good.
We've got a great wrestling program.
Wow.
Pat Popolizio came here 11 years ago, and we've beaten the University of North Carolina 10 times in a row.
Oh. All right, Tar Heels. Been put on notice. But getting over to some business stuff. So you started a business kind of by your bootstraps, and then you built it up from there. It sounds like, and then you expanded into other things. What are some of the early experiences? Let's say what are some of the early mistakes that you made as a business owner?
Well, before the Comet Lounge, I owned a T-shirt business, and the T-shirt business was very successful, which brings up my first point. Hire the best accountant in the field that you can possibly afford, and even if you think you can't afford it, still spend the money. In my T-shirt business, we had a friend who was an accounting major who was our accountant, and I went from one day being reasonably wealthy 24-year-old to owing the IRS $180,000. And I will never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
That is the very first advice. If I have to tell people any one thing, hire the best accountant in the field that you're in that you can possibly find.
That is a big one, and that's actually our number one topic. But I just think in business that I think it's a good principle that for me, for example, owning a security company, I'm only as good as the technicians. I'm only as good as the salespeople and the admin staff and the accountant, certainly, because the last person you want on you is the IRS, because they might be slow, but when they get their hands on you, they're tough to untangle from.
And it's not just the IRS. If you have an accountant who excels in your field, in my case, bars and restaurants, then they know, the way to depreciate things. I don't even know all their terminology.
Sure.
But I do remember that during the Bush years, for some reason, I was told I had to buy a new truck every 2 years. I'm the kind of guy that buys a truck and literally, drives it 250,000 miles till it falls apart.
Sure.
But I was told buy a new truck. Why? Because you're depreciating it over 2 years, and this will say, I don't know.
Sure.
But I had, for like 4 or 5 years in a row, I was getting a new truck every other year. And I don't know what they do, but they seem to be pretty smart.
Well, you follow their advice. That's why we're paying them.
Yep.
And, so it's a good principle. You got to surround yourself with the right people, especially, I would say, I've lost a lot of money over the years on bad business things, or not having something airtight in terms of attorneys, or, I actually had to pay a bookkeeper to go back through and clean up a bunch of stuff from a previous bookkeeper before. So I've dealt with that as well. Unfortunately, it never hit a different level because it got cleaned up prior to that. But when you're spending $50 an hour, then you got to pay someone $75 an hour to clean up the $50 an hour person. It's super frustrating.
You would have been much better off finding the person that did it correctly for $100 an hour.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
And that person usually does it in half the time that the $50 an hour person does it.
Right. And that's where I think I think it's a maturity thing too. I'm 48 at this point. So I think as you get older, you start to really understand the difference between price and value, especially when it comes to experts and professionals that deal with that type of stuff. So we're in 2023, speaking of, and you obviously had a lot of very social businesses, restaurant, social business type things, and you're coming out of, I don't know, I would say, a year and a half of COVID, realistically, and then, I guess we're still not out of COVID, technically. Speaking of bookkeepers, my bookkeeper had COVID this week, so we did our Zoom call for our monthly thing. But, you've obviously your industry has been through an incredibly challenging time. What are some thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Well,
Because you came through it.
We came through it very well. And now nobody was prepared for COVID, but I like to think that we were prepared for the eventuality of something. And our places survived because we had money in the bank. When we make money, we don't spend it all. The company keeps a certain percentage until we build up a what we call our war fund.
Sure.
And when the war fund is funded, then we collect. Then our distribution goes up. But, we were set at Slim's, for instance. We could have lasted maybe a year and a half, 2 years without having to close the doors of the business, even though the doors were closed for, I don't know, what was it, 6 months?
Sure, yeah.
In the case of Mojo's, my partner was just brilliant. From the very first
Chris,
day,
right?
Chris Post.
Yeah.
From the very first day, he was online looking at what other people were doing. If you went to Mojo's, there was a time that we were delivering. Every day he expanded or shrunk the delivery area, depending on how many people, had COVID that we could get to deliver. And in the business, COVID was rampant. And so you had a lot of people that were out for 2 weeks at a time. Back then it was 2 weeks, and I don't remember what the protocols were, but he constantly was, the drive-in, the pickup. So we were on top of that.
Got to stay flexible,
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to the, have a plan, but don't have a backup plan later. But
right.
yeah, I mean, we did well because we were in a financial position. You see a lot of places that close down, and that goes back to our compound interest thing and what we've talked about before. Don't buy a Corvette when you're living in an apartment.
Right. That was me.
Yep. Yeah. And,
did that.
I saw a lot of my friends who, they're friends, they're business competitors, but they didn't last because when they were doing well, they weren't saving, they were out buying boats.
Sure. And it's easy to do. And I've made this mistake personally. It's when I first started making money back in I would say around 2000. That's when I bought the Corvette. And, it's easy to when you start making good money, you think the money's always going to come in. And then our industry had a real big reset. And my income was hit by, I don't know, I went from making, let's just say X, to making about 30 to 40% less in a very short period of time. And, that was the first time all of a sudden I was like this. And I had kids in a young age, so it was like this most of the time anyway. But that was where I think I got more conservative with my spending and saving and investing and that sort of thing. And I think that, there's two ways to get wisdom. You can go through the pain yourself and learn, or you can take, someone's great advice that's been there and done that. Anthony Robbins says something. He says, you can either, people freeze during winter or you can snow ski. And it's all about preparation. And you guys snow skied during COVID because you were prepared.
We snow skied, but it was, snow skiing makes you sweat also.
Sure. And that's the other thing, like being flexible and coming up with a plan. The one thing that I really like, I heard, I don't know if you know Gary Vaynerchuk, but he talked about how one of the things I heard during COVID is he said, this is why you're proactive. Like one of the ideas he said for restaurants is, let's say that Mojo's has a special barbecue sauce. Start bottling that stuff. Start getting some distribution. Start creating a different little revenue stream from the business. Mojo's barbecue sauce or things like that. And that's where, like for me, I watch security. One of the things we're exploring going into solar. We're exploring some different things because there's plenty of markets. We've got a great customer base. We've got good people here. We've got the foundation to do some different things. So being diversified, I think, whether it's your investments or even in business, you're diversified with multiple businesses, really.
Yeah, I mean, I own a hair salon. I go back in.
You're not doing anybody's hair, though.
No, I'm not doing anybody's hair. And
Right.
she'd probably kill me for coming on and saying that I own it. But I go back in on Friday for a haircut. So
Okay.
it's been a month.
All right. Save more than, save a good chunk of what you make. I would say we would both say plan for the future. We can always expect the unexpected. Just like you said, we didn't know COVID was coming, but you were prepared for something.
You got to figure something's coming.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And, like you're talking about diversifying, we don't have the same bar in every place. We don't have cookie cutters. Everything is different, caters to a different crowd. I've always used the analogy, I want to be the Wade Boggs of bar owners, not the Reggie Jackson. You can swing and strike out a lot more often, if you're Reggie Jackson. Mm-hmm. And if you swing for the fence and strike out, you have nothing. If you're Wade Boggs, the man got a single every single time he stepped to the plate.
Right, the guy was a machine.
Yeah, and I'm fine. I'm fine hitting for singles.
Right. But you got a higher average too, so you're on base a lot.
That's it.
You brought up something I'm curious about. You said don't educate your client. You mind expanding on that a little bit?
Well, it's part of the, in here, I was talking, I think that was have a plan. Mm-hmm. And, so when we sit down for a restaurant, so, okay, this is what we're going to do. And Mojo's was going to be an adult restaurant that served burgers and was going to be a rowdy place with nothing but canned beer. And, we weren't going to serve any salads. It was just going to be, a manly type place for the boys to go. And we opened up the first weekend and the place was filled with children. And our menus were like, leave your kids at home. By lunchtime was over, we were printing new menus. We weren't trying to educate our customers. We wanted to serve the customers who came. And it's the Mike Tyson thing. Everybody has a plan till you get hit in the mouth.
Right.
And so don't have a backup plan. Go with what your customers tell you they want. It's fine to open up a new place. It's fine to see if there is a niche out there. But, people are going to come to whatever you open and then cater to those people.
Yeah. We already kind of talked about number one. It's basically hire the best accountant in your field that you can. I think we've pretty much talked about that. Number two is have a plan, but don't be married to it. I think we kind of just talked about that a little bit. Any other examples you might give of not being stuck to a plan and just being flexible? Or
When we opened Slim's, it was called the Lakeside Lounge. We went in partners with a couple friends of mine from New York City that had a wonderful, thriving bar up there called the Lakeside Lounge. And we opened basically the same thing down here. And after about a year and a half, we realized that it just wasn't working. It was perfect for New York. One band every night at 10 o'clock. But that was set up because it was New York. And the band had to be off the stage by 11. They had a wonderful jukebox. We had a wonderful jukebox, but we also had the same 7 guys coming in and playing the same 7 slow, sad songs while they sat at the end of the bar. So, we talked to our partners in New York and said, we want to make these changes. And they were very proprietary of their, they wanted to make it a cookie cutter thing and put them all over the country. And they didn't want us to change these things around. And fortunately, we were all friends, so we bought them out amicably, totally. But, that's just another case of, what works in one place doesn't work in the other.
Sure.
And I have to lament the Lakeside Lounge in New York City because they finally closed down. It's been about 10 years ago, but not because of anything they were doing wrong. It's just the rents finally killed them.
Yeah. Well, New York is just so freaking expensive. I don't know how people live up there. But let me ask you this too about partnerships. Partnerships can be unbelievably difficult, and I know you've got a lot of business relationships. What are some of the pitfalls that you've learned from, or things you've learned from, or mistakes have been made when it comes to partnerships in general?
Well, I have a wonderful partner at Chris Post. I think that we've been together 26, 27 years now. We were talking about it just a few months ago, and we can only think of one time that we ever raised our voices with each other. And that was over something stupid that really didn't have to do with business. So he's been wonderful. There's been a lot of other mistakes that we've made. And I think that part of it is that when you're bringing somebody up, is that they see, for instance, me now. I spend a lot of my time raising funds for the RTC. I spend time in Honduras. They want to be me. And they don't want to be the 25-year-old me who was working the 18-hour days to get to where 59-year-old me is now.
Right.
And we've had some people that have been wonderful that we've brought in, and we've had some other folks that just, they went from being the hardest working employees that we had to the laziest partner that you've ever seen.
You got to pay the price. That's it's easy for people to just say, I want that lifestyle without putting in the 30 years grind prior, or in your case, you're 59. So,
I've been in the restaurant business since I was 15 years old.
Okay. So
with the exception of those, the t-shirt business for a couple of years. And even then I still tended bar because I enjoyed it.
Sure.
And yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, 45 years pretty much.
So one of the things that you would say with a lot of your specific business arrangements and stuff is you get a young guy who's going to be the face of the organization and this and that. They want your lifestyle too quickly without wanting to pay their price of 10, 20, 30 years of grinding.
Well, it doesn't take 10 or 20 or 30 years. It takes seeing your first place through until you can turn that over to someone and move on to the next thing.
Okay.
And that's another problem I've had with partners. We've opened up successful businesses, and rather than see it through until it's 4 or 5 years old and can run by itself, they immediately start thinking, I want to expand. I got to strike while the iron's hot. And, the next thing you know, they open 3 other places without me because, now they're the smartest person on earth.
Right.
or without Chris, and all of a sudden, their new businesses never take off, and our old business suffers
because they're not there. They're trying to prop up the new gig, and they're
Exactly.
stretched too thin.
Exactly. And,
Yep.
you can counsel people, and it just doesn't always take.
So in their case, they've got a good mentor who's been there and done that. And in some cases, they're just not listening like they should be, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and that brings up one of the other points is, giving your employees agency. At Slim's, for example, people often ask me, how do you keep people from just giving all the drinks away? Well, the answer is our employees can give away whatever they want.
Right.
They just have to keep track of it.
Right.
It has to go in the inventory as a given away drink. Then, if we have to rein it in, we can rein it in. But we give them the agency to make the decision, and the criteria that we give them when they make the decision is this good for business? If it's good for business, that's great. If they're just giving away a free drink to get a better tip, that's not necessarily good for business.
Right.
We let them fail. We put people into management positions, and purposely, we will mentor them, but purposely we'll let them fail on some stuff that doesn't cost a lot of money. And failure is part of growing. You're never going to, if everything goes right, you're not going to be prepared when something goes wrong. So it's good for people it's good for us to let our managers, our partners do things wrong, learn from it. As long as it doesn't cost you too much money, I'll sit and watch it happen.
Is that something you had a tougher time with as a younger business owner?
Yes.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Just speaking from my, part of the reason why my company probably hadn't grown as large, not that I ever wanted to be the biggest security company, but just being the mama hen that's sitting on everything, making all the decisions, making sure everything goes right, to the best of your ability. And the downside, if you're a business owner, is you can only be at so many places at so many times. And so for you to be in Honduras and actually enjoy yourself, you got to have folks that can hold the ship down and actually run it relatively similar to your style, but they're going to make mistakes when that happens.
And they've got to hold the ship down, but they've got to be able to not panic when it starts taking on water.
Right.
And the only way you get there is by, having your boat in trouble a few times. And so you let them get in trouble and let them figure their way out of it. And then you tell them, you sit down afterwards, you talk it through and figure out, how would you have done this differently? How should you have done it differently? How will you do it differently? And that's the way people learn. That's what makes good management.
Yeah.
Your employees coming up, learning. I like to tell people, I work for some great managers, Bill Moesta, Bryant Stoneham. I also work for some really crappy managers.
You can say shit.
I work for some shitty managers
Right.
who I will not name.
Right.
And while you learn things from Bill and you learn things from Bryant, you learn a lot more from watching people screw up.
The bad ones.
You look at bad managers and you think, I'm not going to be this guy. I'm not going to do these things. And I learned a lot more from my bad managers. I learned a lot more from watching people make mistakes than I do from watching people do things smoothly.
Yeah. I think there's a great tip there is if you're working somewhere right now and you have aspirations of starting your own business one day, you can learn from everybody. And even if you got a knucklehead manager, it's, take notes of what you don't like, take notes of the way they deliver the message. And just picking on myself a little bit, I was definitely a little bit too much of a sergeant, being a young military guy who made sergeant quickly in the military. It's like I had to sand down some rough edges the way I was communicating, because it's not always what is said. A lot of times it's how it's said, and it can come across as, I can come across as a real know-it-all sometimes or condescending. And that's something I always have to be aware of and work on. And I've worked on that over the years a lot.
Well, yeah, for those of us who know everything, It's
It's easy to come across that way. But and again, we're all a work in progress. I mean, we're still. I'm sure you're in the same boat. I'm still learning every day, trying to improve.
well, one of the things that Chris and I have that you don't, I guess, is we're equal partners in everything that we do. And one of us is a good guy, one of us is a bad guy. We don't always keep the same roles in the same businesses, but oftentimes we have the drill sergeant, and then oftentimes here I am, Beetle Bailey,
lever therapist on the back end, and the other guy's the drill.
I remember we had this one meeting, and I don't even remember what it was about, but it was at Slim's, and we had set it up. I mean, mapped out how the meeting was going to go, and sure enough, when it came time, we knew that this one employee was going to say this one thing, and Chris got up, picked up a chair, threw it across the room, and said, "I am out of here. I don't want to hear from you people anymore," and walked out. And so then I was like, "Well, gosh, guys, what are we going to do to get him, back in a good mood?" And so, I mean, we don't do that quite as often anymore, but
Right.
we play act. And
A little good cop, bad cop.
yeah, we used to go out once a month to all of our bars and walk in. We'd each get a beer. We'd sit down at the end of the bar. And whenever the bartender would come down near us, we'd stop talking and look at him. And then they'd walk away and we'd start talking. And, we weren't in there doing anything but having a beer.
Right.
But for the next 2 weeks, man, the bar was so clean. They were on top of everything. Then they'd slowly fall down and we'd get them right back up by doing it.
It's so funny. I was just talking. I had lunch with Tom today, and we were talking about how I was talking about a principle that I do in the company, but it's kind of like the principle of, because of course we do camera systems, and so I always tell business owners when we put in camera systems, just once in a while, just look on the cameras to find something to call someone about, like, "Hey, Raphael, I see the trash up front needs to be taken out. You mind grabbing that?" Just so they know you're looking there once in a while. Just pop in on there and just comment on anything, so they always kind of know that, hey, Van might be looking right now. But it's a similar principle. It's just, just touching people. Just inspect what you expect, right? So that kind of brings us to number 4 is one of your things is do what you love until you don't love it, then maybe do something different.
And that's been my career in the bar business. I loved bartending. Then I opened my bar, and what we were talking about earlier, the 18-hour days. I got to the point after a couple of years that I couldn't bartend anymore because I was tired from doing the management.
Right.
I got to the point where I was not good with customers anymore. I was short with them.
Interesting.
So I went on to be the manager, being an owner. Chris and I were talking about this the other day. We're not exactly sure when everything happened, but sometime 5 or 6 years ago, Chris just runs everything now, and basically I'm the fix-it man. I got tired of running the businesses. I was bored. I was, I quit doing my job as well as I should have been, and so all of a sudden Chris was taking stuff over, and I basically work for Chris now. We're partners, but somebody's got to be in charge.
Sure.
And now it's him. Chris says, "Hey, this is broken. I either go fix it, which is what I enjoy, or if I can't fix it, I find a subcontractor to fix it, and I help them, which I enjoy even more, being around somebody who's smart and
Because you're learning.
I'm learning something new at 59 years old, and I'm enjoying every minute of my life again."
Well, that's the other thing too is, and you just said something that, like, I very rarely deal with frontline customer stuff anymore. And,
Except for me, because now I call Tom. So
well, all right. But it's my tolerance level has dropped so much in probably the last year and a half, because it's, with technology. I mean, technology can be a pain in the ass. Sensors going out. People get mad at us for all kinds of stuff. Like, our cameras aren't working. Well, okay, did you change your router? Did you change your internet?
You turn it off and turn it back on.
Yeah. So it's just dealing with that kind of stuff. So we've promoted someone in the organization that's been doing a great job, and their attitude is and that's the thing is like I was having this self-awareness that I'm like becoming a little bit of a jerk sometimes, a little bit of a smart ass to where, you signed a contract for 3 years and you're selling your house in a year and this is my fault somehow, just things like that. And it's like, it's time to get someone else in that role. So I was just really burning out, to be honest. So anytime I deal with stuff now, I feel fresher because I'm not dealing with it constantly. And then we got good people, but I can relate to what you're saying. The other thing is I think you guys are in a great position that you can kind of gravitate towards where you're getting enjoyment from the business. And that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I love podcasting with someone like you that I've known for years, and not that we're BFF or anything, but just someone that I've had a lot of respect for and things like that. This is fun to me, and it's good for marketing. It's good for the business. But doing things that I enjoy doing. Tom I was out of town for the Wolfpack thing. Otherwise I would have been there, but like that kind of stuff, that's awesome. It's good networking. It's good getting to see people. So do you envision a point in time where you're done with business altogether?
If you listen very carefully, you can hear that clock ticking right now.
Okay.
My son will graduate in, I guess, June. And at that point, I'm stepping back from the business, and I will be moving back to Honduras.
Okay, full time.
Part-time.
Or a lot of the time.
Part-time at first, as someone else steps into my position. We talked about selling some of the businesses. We're exploring what we're going to do, and again, I told Chris, I said, and then we went through this before. Most people don't know my story, but I retired when I was 40. And I moved to Honduras. My girlfriend, who became my wife, we moved to Honduras. We had a son, and that's Alejandro, who's now graduating. And so I had to come back. But while we were gone for those 5 years, I put Chris in charge of everything. And he sold businesses. We bought some businesses. So we talked about this just the other day, and I was like, man, you're going to be in charge again. If you call me up and say, we're selling Slims, I'll know that you've gotten a good deal, and you will have my back in 100%. If you say that, we're buying the whole TGI Fridays chain, and you've got the money lined up, and I've got to sign something, hey, bud, I'm with you.
What's a high level of trust, yeah.
And if you decide you're going to open a bar and you need me to come up and pound nails, I'm here. So I'm getting ready to step back from basically full-time management work, being the guy that they call, to, let's go have some fun with this. Chris will call me. You available? Yeah, I'll do it.
Sure.
I'll come back up.
Well, you're more in the role of an entrepreneur, and you've worked to get to that point, and you got a great business partner, it sounds like.
You can't give advice to go find a business partner like Chris, because there's not one on every corner. So, if I could tell everybody to be Chris's business partner, that would be the advice I would give.
Let me ask you this specifically about a partnership. Let's say that you and Chris don't see eye to eye on something, or haven't in the past. How do you work to resolve that?
Back in the day, it would be my call. Then once we started having one person be the face of the business, then it became their call. Now, with the exception of Slim's, it's pretty much his call.
Okay.
Any of the places, I defer to him. And I don't know how other people might do that, but it just seems natural in our case.
Okay. So it's kind of just an understanding that, hey, we can have discussions, we can disagree, but at the end of the day, there's a head that's running the business that's going to make that call, and there's just kind of that understanding between you two guys is what it sounds like.
And the other thing is that Chris came up from my bartending tree, from my management tree, from my ownership tree. So there's a lot of things that we see eye to eye on. We were both hard workers. Yeah, that's one of the, we sound like those two guys in the wings at the Muppets now. Those kids don't work hard.
Right.
But we see eye to eye on most things anyway. It's basically nuances that we have trouble with. And the nuances, in that case, we defer to the people that work for us.
Right.
It's like Slims. I mean, what the hell do I know about local bands anymore? I used to be involved in it, writing songs, and, tour managing bands. I couldn't tell you the first local band or anything anymore.
Right.
So why would I be in charge of that?
Sure.
We find somebody who knows the market, and they do it.
And then lastly, which I know you're big on, giving back to your community, often, willingly, and generously.
And it doesn't have to be ostentatiously. Most of the stuff that we do, Chris and I, our businesses, there's a lot of it. Yeah, we take the food truck out and we serve burgers to people.
Sure.
But so much of it is just, we see something that needs done and we donate money to it. We see something that needs to be done and we take the burger truck out. We see somebody that needs money, we make our place available for a fundraiser. And, you got to do those things. Those are the things, there's a reason that Slim's has such a loyal clientele, is because we're there for our customers, not just riding their backs. They made us what we are. So we make sure that we take care of them.
Yeah.
And it's all through the community, we do all these things for the Wolfpack RTC. We give to, a zillion things. And it used to be, I would call Chris, hey, I want to, and we don't even call anymore. Anything less than $5,000, we just do it. And, I don't have to get permission.
And you feel it comes back to you as well.
It's going to come back to you.
Yeah.
If nothing
Just the
else,
goodwill.
If nothing else, it comes back to you when you lay down at night and know that you've done something good for somebody else. Because all those somebody else's got you to where you are. I know it's not a zero-sum game, but there's a reason that I get to play around a lot now. And it's because I worked hard and because these people supported me over the years. So you got to support the people again.
Right, definitely. I think any business owner, or a lot of business owners, I should say, not any, but I would say a lot of business owners that I've dealt with, probably kind of a acts of service love language. And I think it comes very natural to want to give back to the community that we serve and built a successful business in. I just think it comes very naturally.
It does, but there are some folks it doesn't come naturally
Yeah.
to. And it's funny because they don't stick around for long.
Yeah, I could see that. I've definitely seen some of that. Can't take it with us, so it's a balance of saving. It's a balance of investing for the future and giving back to the community. That's for sure.
And fortunately, I'm planning to retire to Honduras where, I can live on basically
Right.
$1,000, $1,500 a month. So
Right.
that makes it a lot easier for me to give stuff away.
That's awesome. And I'm gonna have to pick your brain on Honduras because I'm definitely looking at some South American, type places. Like I've looked at Panama or Colombia or at some of those places.
Well, I've been to all of them. I'll tell you what you need to know.
Okay, and I got a couple of friends that are real involved in Costa Rica right now that they love. But at the end of the day, it's we work hard. We want to enjoy the journey, and we're all on that path. So I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with me and our audience here today, Van. And Wolfpack RTC, check it out online.
WolfpackRTC.org.
There we go. And doing good things out there, Van. And thank you for sharing today.
And just let me put in a plug for your business before we go.
Okay.
It's been, I guess, about 20 years that we've been doing this.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
You're getting old, man.
Well, I remember, when we switched from the company that we had, switched to you for Slims, and then immediately started switching every place else that we had.
Right.
20-year relationship's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. You're definitely VIP. You got one of those names that everybody in the company knows, so it's kind of, it's kind of cool having great long-term customers like that. So we definitely appreciate you. And we'll wrap up with that. And I appreciate it, Van. And thank you for joining us for another 5 Things podcast. We'll see you next time.
Hello, this is Brian Smith, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more valuable content.